Hey guys, thanks for stopping by to watch a video here at All I See Is W, where the goal of this channel is to gain on positive proceeds and to lead with an altruistic mindset. In today's video, I'd like to talk about Bitcoin updates, especially with all the news that has been going around. We've actually seen Bitcoin price hover up over 100,000 for over a week now. That's been such a big milestone achievement. We're seeing consolidation here. Most of us are wondering how high will Bitcoin go up. I'll cover all of those technical updates as well as covering MicroStrategy MSTR. We'll cover just with the recent news that was announced with MSTR and also look at price predictions using technical analysis. Now, if you're new to this channel, I would really appreciate you hitting the like, subscribing for more related content. Thank you. We all learned from last week that Donald Trump, the president of the United States, who is a pro-Bitcoin president, he signed a crypto executive order. There's been just a number of executive orders that have been signed, but it's been a big win-win situation here. While we haven't heard so much about the strategic Bitcoin reserve, I think what we've learned through last week is that now, just with the differences that we're seeing with the announcement of having a crypto task force, also limiting central cryptocurrency banks, and also changing SAB in the accounting rules, where now banks are able to have that flexibility to custody Bitcoin. So now they're able to have service provided with their clients, depending on clients who really want the banks to apply that service, be able to custody their own Bitcoin versus doing it on their own. So all of this really changes the dynamics because now financial institutions, banks really want to get more involved with Bitcoin, increase their Bitcoin HODL, similar to what financial institutions are seeing with the value that's been added for big time players like BlackRock, Fidelity. In fact, with BlackRock, we saw IBIT ETF created last year, but we see so much money inflows right now. All of this is really solidifying the value of Bitcoin as a commodity that we're seeing. So all of this really changes the dynamics, and what does that all lead to? An increase in the share price of Bitcoin. So let's first off look at the share price of, you know, uh, Bitcoin, and then we'll talk about MSTR price. So looking at the technical analysis, currently where we are right now, we're at the 105,000. So just looking at, just the technical analysis, just using seasonality here, what we see is that in the month of January, we see historically, just going from 2017 to now, we see upside with like 5% gain. You see here in February, generally just based on average, we see upside of like close to 14%. March is also a positive month just based on all of those years, as well as April with the gain of 9%. May, we also see some upside here. June, just based on the data, we see a slight drop of 4%. However, July, it kicks in with a 10% gain. With August, we see some slight reduction here, but as you look at Q4, October, November, December, you see some huge upside here. October with average of like 20%, November 8%, ending the year with 7.5%. So what does this all mean? Yes, while there are different cycles of Bitcoin, especially what we saw back in 2022 when Bitcoin dipped all the way down, I think that where we are in 2025, we're going to see the next gap up. There's been just forecasts, even BlackRock CEO was forecasting 700,000 for the price of Bitcoin. It may not be 2025 to see that price, but I think that as we head into the upcoming years, 700,000 is definitely where we're headed. It's not if, but it's a when aspect. But overall, price of Bitcoin, according to HC Wainwright, we have price forecasts of it even potentially getting up to $250,000. So just looking at the seasonality here, as well as the Ichimoku cloud, current price action at 105,000 per Bitcoin. Good news is that we're above that Ichimoku cloud. Think of that Ichimoku cloud as that gravitational pull down. If the price of Bitcoin is in between or below that cloud, it will really draw that gravitational pull, bring that price down. But overall, technical analysis, I think just with all of the catalyst that's been going on, with Trump now as the president, with the executive order in place, we're going to hear a lot about different states, being a pro Bitcoin state to start hodling up as much Bitcoin as possible. Let's take a look at just recent news with Bitcoin. So we know that with the BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, it actually hit 1 billion trading volume rapidly. So that's showcasing their mainstream acceptance and institutional interest. So there's other financial institutions like Vanguard and other companies that haven't really got into Bitcoin yet. We've also heard about big time companies like Meta having an interest with Bitcoin. I think all of this is really going to change. BlackRock's 60 billion Bitcoin investment, that just shows their overall commitment as much as what we see with MicroStrategy. But I think that with the recent change, banks, authorities, now they can offer Bitcoin custody services, which marks a significant step encouraging institutional adoption of digital assets. So where we are now, 2025, we're going to see a lot of financial institutions, banks, including large cap, small cap companies buying up Bitcoin. So that's going to be a big time shift along with the many years to come. Also, with the SEC's rule update, easing regulation on Bitcoin custody, that will definitely increase bank involvement and aligning with global standards. So, what does this all mean? This really removes that extra layer of difficulty, especially in the United States, and this will all lead towards the benefit of having the United States be the stockpile for Bitcoin and AI, as much as what we've heard with Trump's announcement just with the recent days. Let's take a look at this visual here. We're looking at the Bitcoin rainbow chart. So with the halving that took place in April of 2024, so we haven't even got a year out yet where we are now. But the key takeaway here is that we're still early on in this bullish cycle here. It hasn't really got up to that level where we're at that FOMO yet. It definitely is still in that accumulation phase. So gapping up with the price of Bitcoin up to like 1x, 1.5x of the current price. We still have a lot in the tank right here with the price of Bitcoin, especially with the halving creating more difficulty for the miners. Supply and demand kicks in, especially if it's harder, where the demand is higher, then overall price will continue to go up. Let's take a look at MicroStrategy technical analysis here. So, with this green line here at one point, November 21st, we saw that all-time high year to date of 2024 at that time was 800% gains in that year alone. However, we did see, some shorting going on at that all-time high. People started taking profits. It started bleeding out down to about $280, towards the end of 2024. However, we're beginning to see consolidation. People like the price at that point. People are beginning to buy in. Inflows are increasing. And I think where we are right now, even though the last week it's been on a downward trajectory, just based on the recent news, we'll cover all those updates as to why we're seeing price go down from like 400 down to 350 range. I do think that we have potential for it to V-shape back up, just with the reaction that had happened last week. I think the shorters took advantage of that, the MicroStrategy potential of having to pay $19 billion of unrealized gains. And it's like, really, do you have to pay for unrealized gains? That's I think Trump is really going to take away all those BS requirements, and the shorters also took advantage of MicroStrategy announcement of that 1.5 billion convertible note. We'll talk more about that, but I think it's just shorters taking advantage in the near term, but we could definitely see that V shape up, especially with February 5th announcement on their earnings report for Q4. Price of Bitcoin went up so much in Q4 of 2024, and all of that we're going to see as revenue, huge upside with MicroStrategy, especially because their cost per Bitcoin with their 450,000 HODL at 60,000, where the price is right now, that's just all profits there. But I do think that we're going to see 1,200 is my estimate in the year 2025. Let's take a look at just updates that we saw with MicroStrategy. So we heard that, there was news about MSTR might having to pay tax on unrealized Bitcoin gains. And it's weird because it's like, wait, why is this even a requirement? All of this is speculation here. I really do think that, with Trump as a crypto-friendly administration, all of this is going to be exempt. I think this was just all fabricated from the prior administration, but I think that unrealized gains should not even be taxed. It doesn't make sense when you have a HODL of Bitcoin and the value of Bitcoin goes up. You haven't sold anything yet, so all of that technically should just be, what you're holding on to. So the fact that it's unrealized gains, it should not be taxed, but people took advantage of this, just fake information that just has been really stirring the pot here. Let's take a look at, just this visual here in regards to, you see here debt issuance here. So MSTR, they've gathered about $6 billion of, global convertible bond issuers in one calendar year. You see here MSTR has just gathered so much money. Think of them as like a vacuum or even like the black hole in outer space, just gathering up, sucking up all of that fiat through convertible debt and the ability to buy up Bitcoin. Now, the good news is that when this business model is applied, technically shareholders, they'll gain because they actually own more Bitcoin through the purchases that MicroStrategy does with these convertible debt that they do. So I think that with this business model, it really just shows MSTR's resilience, trying to build on its market cap to be the number one Titan company. And as the saying goes from Michael Saylor, there's no second best. So I think that his conviction, his way of strategically implementing a strategy that makes MicroStrategy the stockpile company for holding Bitcoin, it really separates MSTR from other companies. Let's take a look at just the data here that we see with the number of Bitcoin held. So you see ETFs, miners in blue, corporations in red here. So IBIT, that's led by, you know, BlackRock, so they have about 572,000. So with MSTR, with that recent approval for increasing the amount of shares in order to buy up more Bitcoin, I think MSTR may very well bypass um, BlackRock very soon here. But when you look at it, having 500,000, close to 500,000 Bitcoins, in fact, it'll be more than 500,000 Bitcoin very soon. That shows MSTR's conviction here, but you don't see like any second best here. The saying goes, because you look at other ETFs or even, miners, the top number one miner here, Mara at like 45,000, Riot at 17,000, CleanSpark 10,000, even Tesla less than 10,000. But MSTR, this big disparity that's created with the amount of HODL, I think it goes in complementary when we see IBIT Bitcoin HODL increase, that will correlate to a rise in MSTR price as well. So I think MSTR and IBIT, they go in complementary. Let's take a look at this visual here. I think this really shows you the MicroStrategy Bitcoin refinery model. So what MSTR does is, they're like a, refinery in that they suck up all of that fiat, like as a black hole, and they buy up, Bitcoin. And what happens? they have different levers here. The outputs would be shareholders would gain on dividends. You have convertible bonds, equity, leveraged ETFs, and options. So that caters towards the needs of, different clients that want different gains, whether it's through dividends, whether it's through aggressive investments like what we see with like MSTU, MSTR, and steroids. So all of that is converted from raw Bitcoin to wrapped Bitcoin based on the needs of clients. So that really is the strategy for Michael Saylor to just buy up more Bitcoin and cater the needs towards different clients here. So, just looking at it through the lens of like having multiple options that will meet the needs of clients through additional purchase of Bitcoin here. Let's take a look at the recent news here in that MicroStrategy, to redeem over $1 billion of 2027 convertible notes and settle all conversion requests in shares. So what they're trying to do is, bring down the liabilities on their balance sheet and use that money to buy up more Bitcoin. So as long as Michael Saylor is able to convince shareholders that they can accumulate more money to buy up Bitcoin, that's really going to allow for this business model to work here. So I think that there's going to be, just big time conviction on the belief that the more Bitcoins MSTR buys, the more value it will provide to shareholders. So I think that this is definitely a win-win situation, although, the shorters take advantage of potential dilution that comes into play. Let's also take a look at this visual here. So what we saw with that redeeming, over $1 billion of, 2027 convertible note is really to ramp up, the amount of Bitcoins purchased every week. We've seen here, like consistent 11 weeks of just purchasing Bitcoin here. But I think that we're beginning to see a gradual increase with the amount of Bitcoin purchased. We saw in November timeframe here when price of Bitcoin, right around that election time before that big run up of 30% with price of Bitcoin, it started going down with the amount of purchases here. But I think, because of where we are here, Michael Saylor's goal is to, buy up more Bitcoins at larger quantities based on the convertible note. So what does this all mean here? So I think that where we are with just the recent weeks of MSTR trading, because we've been seeing consolidation, more inflows into like IBIT, Bitcoin price going up, as well as all of the external variables with Trump now in the administration. Now, even with leverages, MicroStrategy, think of the company as like a Bitcoin bank. They can lease out their Bitcoin through different ways and gain revenue on the Bitcoins that they actually hold. So I think that the business model of MSTR, there's no other company that can compare, and the share price in 2025 is expected to go beyond $1,200. So that's my key takeaway. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to hit the like, subscribe to All I See Is W. Thank you guys.